Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so excited to be here with Alexandra Alessi, VP of Brand.com at Olaplex, and Audrey Ceuppens, Head of Retail and Alcohol Delivery at Uber, to talk about all things CX. I'd love to give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves. How about we start with you, Alexandra?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us here, or having me here. I'm Alexandra Alessi, the VP of Brand.com at Olaplex. So I oversee our brand website user experience, as well as our retention marketing and customer service. So we're big users of Contentsquare. And yeah, I've been excited to be here today and hear what everyone's been saying.
Yeah, and hi everyone. Thanks for having us today. My name is Audrey. I head up retail partnerships at Uber. And so that means that we partner with retailers in different industries, grocers, convenience stores, but also traditional pure play retailers. And so I'm responsible for that business across Uber in North America.
Awesome. Well, in my role at Inc., I talk to so many founders and so many brand leaders about customers today. And today's customer has so many options, they're so discerning, and they're also hard to reach. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how the two of you are, learning more about these customers. Like, how has the customer journey changed at your businesses? How about we start with you, Alexandra?
Yeah. Like you said, I think the customer journey and the ecosystem has become, consistently more sort of fragmented, and that path to purchase is more complex than ever before. Something that we're really seeing at Olaplex within the beauty and hair care space is with customers having the ability to get so much more data at their fingertips, whether they're using, we've been talking a lot about AI tools or just traditional search, finding information on social media, TikTok, et cetera. The consumer is just much more discerning. And I think the level of product information that they're looking for now and that they're expecting when they come to your website is really evolving at a fast pace. And they want a level of personalization as well. I think people are getting much more comfortable with that and really expecting that as part of the user journey. So, for us, I think really doubling down on product education, accurate product information. I think there's also can be a lot of misinformation out there in the world. And how does your website really provide a vehicle for you to get that information out there to the customers who are looking for it?
Yeah, I think for us, one of the trends that we've seen, and this is also the why behind Uber's venture into retail, is that we've seen that customer expectations have changed. Speed, convenience, and accessibility are no longer a perk. They're really an expectation. Uber, mobility is at the core of what Uber does. And so we realized that we had something to contribute and a role to play in that. And so 4 years ago, we opened up our apps and our marketplace, essentially, to our consumers, where now they can buy literally anything, anywhere, anytime. And so we're helping retailers bring their items to the consumer much more faster.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so interesting too to consider how much more challenging it is to retain your customers today. Contentsquare's most recent benchmark found that customer acquisition costs have risen 13% year over year. And a big part of retaining your customers, of course, is having really stellar CX. And to have stellar CX, you need data on your customers. So I'd love if both of you could chat me through, how you retain this data and what you do with it, and what are the most important sources of data. Why don't we start with you, Audrey?
Yep. Yeah. So one of the great things about Uber is that our consumer base is highly engaged. There's multiple ways in which our consumers use our apps and our platforms today. So we're really tapping into that data, not just from a quantitative perspective, but also from a qualitative perspective. Think about, is the consumer ordering an Uber Black or an Uber X? Are they going to the airport, taking frequent trips to the airport? Or are they going to spas? What are they ordering on Uber Eats? Are they ordering sushi or ordering pizza? And so we're leveraging that data to really get a thorough understanding of the consumer profile, and then to determine the right targeting for these consumers. So, are we targeting a Sprouts consumer? Or are we targeting an Aldi consumer? Are we targeting a Sephora consumer or a Best Buy consumers. So we have a lot of data internally that allows us to really segment our customers and make sure that we surface relevant content to them.
Yeah, and I would say at Olaplex, I think one of the things that we've been working on as part of our, digital transformation journey is we had a lot of data in different places and in sort of different silos. And, as the e-commerce team and the brand.com team, we would look a lot, obviously, at, Google Analytics was a key one, Shopify Analytics, but we felt, where Contentsquare could really come in and help us was some of those more qualitative or like taking a step further down into what you were seeing or to give context to your KPIs. We love session replay. I think that's a fun thing to, help you learn a bit more about like what's really happening. So that's something that we're really kind of trying to focus on is how do we marry all these different worlds? How do we think about what's happening in customer service? What are conversations that people are having with our agents, what is the sentiment that we're seeing on social media, comments, and trying to kind of like stitch this sort of different profiles together similarly to understand who is our customer, what kind of clusters of customers do we have, and then how do we either target them differently or provide a different on-site experience, where we can. So yeah, I would say it's an ongoing process though of trying to kind of merge all of these worlds together and these different data sources.
Yeah. I'd love to see, by a show of hands, who is more focused on customer retention this year versus customer acquisition. Let's raise our hands if it's customer retention. All right. Customer acquisition? Seems like we might be evenly split, but important to have good data for both of those goals. Speaking of goals, I'd love to hear a little bit more, zooming out on, your biggest strategy going into 2026. What's your biggest goal for your role next year?
Yeah, so I would say for 2026, I know we've all been here talking a lot about AI, and for us, that's going to be a really important piece. How do we leverage AI? Where are we using it? How can we leverage it to improve our sort of speed when it comes to analysis, but then also identifying like what the actual opportunity is? I think for us, that's going to be critical. And then the other thing that we're really honing in on, and I think I heard another speaker talk about this, is how do we continue to ensure that our website is really functioning for this new world that we're in, with the ChatGPTs, Gen AI overviews, are we really making sure that the copy on the website is good, the meta tagging, the meta titles, all of these things that, ensure that your story is going to get out there in a real way. So yeah, I would say really leaning into AI and being open also to try and test and learn. I think we all don't know what we don't know, and it's important to be open to trying new things, but then also you're going to have speed bumps along the way and to be able to kind of navigate through that.
Yeah, and I think on our end, so as I mentioned, our business is 4 years old now, so we're really still in hyper-growth mode. So for us, it's all about continuing to scale up the selection that we offer to our consumer base. Just this month, we've had partners like Sephora and Best Buy, Dollar General, to name a few, on board on our marketplace, and we're going to continue to prioritize a wide breadth of selection to our customers. So that's a big focus for us. And then I think a second area, and that's a little bit more long-term, but definitely something that we're thinking about. When you think Uber and retail today, we play a role, a very practical role. Consumers come to us for the immediate needs. Hey, I'm dyeing my hair. I need, a bowl, gloves, etc. That's really where we find the stickiness today. Our vision is really to build a big long-term retail commerce. And so for us, in order to do that, we need to move from providing a functional, practical benefit to providing an emotional benefit to the shopper. And so that's a big part of our journey that we're on right now is really identifying, what is unique to Uber and how can we, as a company, play a unique emotional role into the consumer journey and their shopping journey.
Yeah. Alexandra, you mentioned, things are always changing, especially the pace of technology today is kind of incomprehensible. At the same time, the way that consumers interact with brands, that's always changing too. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, what emerging trends in terms of digital touch points you're each engaging with in order to, try to boost your conversion, try to get more out of your existing customers, and to obtain new customers as well.
Yeah, I think in our space, in beauty in general, but specifically in hair care, we have such a presence when it comes to social media. It's such a visual product category. So I think we're constantly trying to figure out how do we provide the best user experience for someone who's coming from, say, a TikTok, right? Like that's a very unique environment. There's tons of video content, everything's moving very quickly, and then you can kind of like land on an e-commerce site and you're like, whoa, this feels like a bit disjointed. So I think, for us, we're really trying to think, how do we merge different worlds for people maybe coming from different channels so that user experience is as seamless as possible. And then the other thing I think, as I kind of mentioned before, we're really focused on product education. What is the right products that you need for your hair, or what order should you use them in? There's a lot of ways that people do that, and we're trying to, I think, tap into, people like to kind of learn and discover in different ways. So we have a blog that if you want to read more, you can read about it. We have different quizzes that we're trying to test out so that we offer different journeys based on what the customer is looking for and how they want to interact versus trying to sort of force people to engage with your products or your website in a specific way. So yeah, I would say definitely, that education piece and really merging this sort of social world is going to be a key part of our strategy and thinking going forward.
Yeah, and I know that storytelling is a really big part of that too.
Yes, definitely storytelling for us. We're a premium hair care brand. We're competing as well against people that want to maybe trade down into more mass brands, and we need to convince them, why do you want to spend the money on this type of hair care? And hair is an emotional category for people as well. So how do we bring stories from our customers to the website? How do we link back? Also, we have a lot of amazing global ambassadors, and they have amazing stories to tell as well, and I think are a real, kind of tool that we have in our toolkit to bring people to the brand, but also retain people. So we're also trying to think of creative ways to deploy that messaging a bit more on our website, in our, CRM messaging, et cetera, to, really show why someone needs to come shop at Olaplex. There's so many choices, and we need to really tell the best story if you want to get people to come and have great products. That's a table stakes.
Yes, non-negotiable.
Yes.
Audrey, how about you?
Yeah, so I mentioned how we leverage our internal data to get a better understanding of who the shopper is. I think one area that I'm really excited about is the fact that we're going to leverage that data not just to get these insights, but also to nudge the consumer at a time when it's super relevant. So I'll give an example. Let's say you're going on a business trip, you book an Uber with your Uber business profile, you're on your way to the airport. That might be a right time for us to nudge the consumer with a very subtle message around, hey, do you have all your needs? Do you have your charger, your headphones, et cetera? And so that's something new that we're venturing into, and we're really, bridging that within our Uber Rides app, and I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
We're seeing good results there.
That's definitely playing to the convenience and even the emotional aspect that you talked about before. I know that the stress of going to the airport and wondering if you have your charger is a big hurdle for a lot of people. I'd love to hear, we were chatting before this panel a lot about AI and how we're using it in our personal lives and in our work lives. I'm sure that this is a huge topic for everyone in this room right now. But I'd love to hear how both of you are using AI, especially with regards to making the customer flow a little bit more efficient. How about you, Audrey? Why don't we start with that? Yeah.
So there's the obvious use of AI to optimize the work of our growth teams with deploying collateral, et cetera. So obviously Uber encourages its teams to use AI as much as possible. So that's something that we try to do on a daily basis. Very open though, so there's no like guidelines with our teams, but we encourage them as much as possible. From a customer journey perspective, what I'm really excited about is we're exploring how we can integrate AI solutions into improving the experience. And one of the first things that we'll be rolling out by the end of the year is the use of AI solutions to improve stock counts and stock checks for the stores that are live on our marketplace. So what we're going to do is we're going to equip our couriers with the capabilities to take pictures of shelves while they're picking and packing our consumers' orders in the stores. And these pictures will allow us to optimize actual stock counts that our retailers have in store. And as a result, just provide better consumer experiences because we'll have better, in real-time data available on availability and whether a product should be made available on a storefront for purchase online, yes or no.
Yeah, and I think us at Olaplex, I think similar to what Audrey said about Uber, our leadership team is really encouraging all teams to lean in and use AI as much as possible. I would say in our team, and when we think about the website and e-commerce, I think something that we're really excited about and want to use it more for is really more of that analysis as well, like we were sort of talking about, and I think things that Contentsquare showed this morning were super exciting, right? Where you're trying to find friction points, or that Monday morning, you can schedule like what happened last week on my website, like what happened over the weekend, like give me this nice readout, because I think we spend a lot of time doing analysis, and we want to spend more time trying to fix the problems versus trying to find the problems or find the root cause of the problem. So I think really leaning into that as much as we can. In a lot of our platforms, a lot of the platforms that we use, are rolling out more AI tools. So it's really us getting really comfortable using them. And then I would say the other thing that we're really interested about for, this year and beyond is in that retention marketing and the channels that people want to be communicated with. So are you more likely to convert on SMS, email? Should we talk to you on paid social? Do you want a push notification? Do you want them in some sort of order that, you prefer email first, then SMS? I only respond to SMS, whatever that may be. So I think we're really trying to get smarter about what channels we're using to talk to our consumers on. And that's something that AI can definitely help us with and that we're excited about.
Yeah. Audrey, what you said about the the store shelves and getting that really live view of store inventory seems like a great way to reduce customer friction. I'm curious, Alexandra, if there are any things that Olaplex has done recently that have kind of smoothed out that customer journey as well.
Yeah, we went through a big site redesign earlier in the year, and we used Contentsquare in the entire process, and we, were able to help smooth out a lot of sort of pain points we had around, navigation and just sort of like our homepage flow and the overall website flow. I would say another thing that just is a recent example, we just had a new product launch that came out. We launched 2 new hair masks for anyone that's out there that wants to try them. And we were noticing by using Contentsquare that the most engaged places on the product page were the how to use module, and then down below we have this FAQs where we basically say do I use a hair mask in place of a conditioner, with a conditioner, etc. So using that data to help identify that that's where people were engaging with on our product detail page was an insight that then we can reorder, change the copy on the product page. We went to our social team, we went to our marketing team, we said, we clearly need more information out there to the customer about when do I use a hair mask and how is this different than a conditioner? And for me, that was a great example of finding an insight that we can then action and help educate our consumers so that they have a better experience. They should know, when they come to the product page where to find the information, have a more seamless checkout, and immediately know this is how I use it in my routine. So I think we're going to try to continue to find more of those and continue to look for those to improve our overall customer experience.
We're going to turn it in a little bit to the audience for questions, so start percolating on those thoughts. But to wrap it up here, I'd love to ask both of you to share a piece of advice for the audience on how they can, make their CX experience more efficient for their customers.
Yeah, I'll take this one. I think my advice would be look at the data. Often you'll find a lot in the data. So Uber is very data driven, and usually the first step is we'll look at the data. And then one advice that I give my teams is when you're 80% there, just go for it. I think the retail space is moving so quickly. It's so hard to keep up with all of the changes. And so we try to have a test and learn mentality, and 80% for us is good enough to go out and try new things, and something I definitely encourage.
And yeah, I definitely agree. You don't want to get lost in the sauce of data analysis paralysis, because you could do that for your whole job all day, every day. So I definitely think for us really having that sentiment, like you said, around testing and learning, encouraging myself, the team, to lean into these AI tools. Nobody really knows them better than anybody else at this point, so I think you need to really be open to doing also a lot of self-learning and really just kind of testing and learning. So I would say for me, that's the biggest thing we try to focus on, and to also be humble in not knowing what you don't know, but also that, as you say, things are changing so fast that something that you did 6 weeks ago or even 3 weeks ago that worked could be not the right choice in 2 weeks. And you need to be flexible in that and not so rigid in your thinking.
Awesome. Great advice. We have some mics around the room. You can raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll be happy to answer. I think we see one over here. We could repeat the question too.
Yeah, so the question was, how far do you take an insight to like sort of other teams, and how kind of far up maybe the sort of product pipeline do you bring it? I would say the intention is yes. I mean, we, as of now, in that example, it was more in the kind of like go-to-market teams in real time. So your social team, your marketing team, we have an education team that helps train, hairstylists that we brought that insight to say, hey, I think we should double down here. But I think why not, bring it further up the funnel. We do that a lot in general, just around sort of SEO, and we do sort of keyword and query mining when a product is in an initial sort of still ideation of how should we name it. We want it to be searchable, et cetera. So I think that's the goal. And as of right now, right, we don't have the most formal process to do a lot of this. So a lot of it, I think, when you're an e-commerce or a digital leader in your organization, it's also being comfortable to kind of like put yourself out there and go to the other teams and share that information. And a lot of it is for us just done on Slack, honestly. It's me writing messages being like, here's information, I think we should action this. So I think you have to also evangelize your own tools and your own platforms is important.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because I'm a UX designer now, but I was also a packaging designer and whatnot. So I was wondering, like, these type of insight would be really helpful for packaging designers as well. So Audrey, I have another question for you. You mentioned about user profile, the business side of user profile. There's also the personal side of user profile. As a user, I use Uber for both business and personal. Are there any plans to merge or at least have those two profiles linked so you have like a holistic view of the user?
First of all, love to hear that you're using Uber both personally and professionally. Great. Thank you for your business. They are merged. So we look at the data. There's one user for us in our system. So even though you have two profiles in the app, it all ties back to one single user. Yeah, so we've already merged it.
More questions? Maybe some in the back. Oh, we have one up here in the first row. Yeah.
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 I'm curious, and this could be for both of you. How is like, oh, thank you. Hi all. I also am UX experience trained, but I work in brand building, and I'm curious, like, how are you investing in like community as a channel to drive, acquisition for customers, both of you, and are you leveraging AI in that aspect? And if so, how? It would be great to hear some of the things you may be experimenting with.
So I would say yes, we use a lot of different platforms and different things to generate community, drive community. I would say a couple examples that we did recently also was how we're kind of merging the like IRL experience with the online experience. So for Fashion Week, we had a mask pop-up in New York City, and we leveraged a lot of different things on our website in that experience. So we had our hair mask quiz that you could take in person on a big screen, really encouraging people to engage with our website and our products and that product education. So that's definitely a big way that we're looking to build community. And then another one that we strategically have is we have a whole host of professional hairstylists that we also engage with, which is a different way of talking to a hairstylist than you might talk to just a regular end consumer, because they're obviously much more educated on hair care, et cetera. So we have different ways where we're engaging at different trade events with that community, as well as via different like sort of social media accounts that we have. So that's definitely something that we're continuing to try to tweak. And then thinking about the messaging, like the language, you can talk a bit more technical with a hairstylist about a product than you would talk to just a regular kind of lay person. So that's something we're constantly trying to tweak of like, how do we probably be a little bit more scientific and technical in this space and maybe a bit more emotional and, before and after in another space here.
Yeah, and then for us, it's a bit of a nuanced answer. So our retail is a 4-year-old business unit within Uber. I think, up until this day, we really focused on the low-hanging fruit, which is we have 60 million users that are actively engaged with Uber on a monthly basis. They either order something on the Uber Eats app or they book a ride. And so for us, the first step was how do we bring these 60 million of users into the retail world? How do we expose them to the offering that we have that is not restaurant or not our rides offering. So that's been really like the first phase of like the growth for us in acquiring customers. I think what we realize now is that obviously for our bigger business, our delivery platform and our rides platform, obviously we try to be locally relevant and culturally relevant. I think Taylor Swift's album is coming out this week, I think.
Friday.
I'm not a Swiftie, sorry, I'm not a Swiftie. But
Don't say that out loud.
I know it's coming out, and we have a bunch of activations and a bunch of activities planned around that. We're sponsoring that. So if you go in the Uber Eats app today, you'll see that there's a bunch of orange themed items in the app with some nice discounts. But so we're trying to tie our activities to being locally and culturally relevant, but it's more. Not necessarily just related to the retail business, it's more holistic for our Uber rides and our Uber Eats delivery brand.
We might have time for one quick one, if anyone. All right, we're going over there.
Hi, my name is Ksenia. Thank you so much for your panel. It's very interesting. I'm working for the company which provides customer service for luxury and premium brands. And it's going to be really interesting to hear your perspective of, in general, customer communication from across all platforms. Customer service is not only managing after sales or some issues, but also building relationship. I would like to ask, in perspective from Uber and Olaplex, what you can see as a trend switching using AI, building connection with the client, building communities and loyal customers so they're not switching to your to other platforms or different brands. What would you say from perspective of AI, still keeping personal touch and human touch, or you see in AI future, and how it affect on your client and build the loyalty? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think for us, customer service is a really important critical pillar, right? You know, the customer journey doesn't end just when you hit the checkout button. It goes through the whole experience. Where I think where we're trying to lean into AI more when it comes to customer service is those like simpler tasks. You know, where's my order? What's my tracking number? Et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that AI can answer very quickly, you know, for people, and we should continue to lean in there. Where we want to make sure we still have that human touch is those sort of more complicated use cases, right? Or, you know, if someone is having sort of like an emotional response, whatever, with customer service, it's really important for us that our customer service team is trained in how to do customer service. So are they empathetic? Do they know the products? They should know all the product education. So for us, it's how do we free up time for our customer service agents to address maybe more difficult cases and to have that knowledge and time for the training. And AI can really help you with like low-hanging fruit customer service issues that you could kind of check off that list really quickly. So we're kind of, I think, trying to approach it in that way and leverage technology to ensure that we can have the best customer experience.
Yeah, I completely align, and I think maybe on you know, the AI piece and why it's also maybe even more so relevant in Uber's case. Uber, shopping retail on Uber today is all about convenience and you know, the urgent need. And so when friction happens, whether it's when you're ordering or your delivery is taking longer than expected, that's not a great experience, and something we want to intervene in as quickly as possible. So tools, AI tools, can help us you know, identify the friction and then roll out the needed steps to you know, provide a form of appeasement or let the customer know that we care and that we'll take care of them. So from that perspective, for us, it's something we're leaning on quite heavily.
Well, Audrey, Alexandra, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, and thank you all for joining us for this panel and coming to CX Circle.
Thank you.